No, you're going to feel like you drove a ways just to get here. We're back, and this is Joan with the Joan Jerkovich Show. We're back talking to our mixologist, and we want you to stay tuned then for our second guest. We're talking about wine and spirits this holiday weekend, and we're here with Griff, and he has created some of his own cocktails. He has, where you work, or do you call it what kind of a bar do you call it?
Our bar, well, we call it a wine bar because we have an
bar.
extensive wine list,
Mhm.
but we focus on the classics. We have a list of classic cocktails on our menu that's with 38 different cocktails.
So even though you're called a wine bar, those of us, and I myself am one of those, prefer a cocktail over wine. I truly do.
Yeah, we have an extensive cocktail list.
Extensive cocktail list. So we've talked a little bit about the artistry of making cocktails, how you have to use the fresh ingredients. Tell us about serving temperatures, because that factors into different cocktails.
It does. Serving temperatures, I mean, a lot of times if you're shaking like a vodka martini, for instance, you want it to be extremely cold. So you're shaking it for a while.
With those little ice slivers on
Yeah.
top.
Exactly. And, if you were making a gin martini, or basically the kind of the rule of thumb is that if you are making a drink with juices as well, that you'd shake it pretty well and mix it up really well. But if it's all spirit, if it's whiskey, vermouth, anything in there that's all spirit, maybe some liqueurs, that you would stir it. And it would still get cold, but you wouldn't be breaking up the ice as much, and you wouldn't have those ice shavings in your drink.
Now, I've never heard that before, because I always thought that a martini, which in many cases is mostly a spirit,
Mhm.
some sort of
It is,
alcohol, is shaken. What happened? James Bond was wrong? Please don't tell me James
Oh, no.
Bond was
No,
shaken,
but
not stirred.
But James Bond drank vodka martinis or the Vesper. The Vesper is a classic cocktail that James Bond would drink, and that one was shaken. But typically, you would anyone drinking a gin martini, which was the first martini, it was all with gin, because vodka wasn't popular then. It would be stirred. People could have it shaken if they like, but when you shake gin, it will change the profile, the flavor of the gin. It actually will break up the botanicals in the gin, and it'll taste differently if you shake it or stir it.
That's interesting, because gin is definitely my spirit of choice, and I wouldn't have known that. Would it be appropriate for me when I order, if I should order a gin martini, to ask them to stir it?
Definitely.
It's okay, because I know for a fact, and certainly we're here in Salina, that that's not happening. If they hear martini, they think shake.
Right.
In fact, they bring it to the table sometimes with the shaker.
And that's a common misconception with many bars. And really that's what, so much of this art that I would call craft bartending was lost during Prohibition. You had all these bartenders who, they still have bartenders and speakeasies and stuff, but it was all under the table. And the art was kind of lost because you had all these bartenders retiring, finding other work to do, and then once, Prohibition was repealed, they probably didn't go back to bartending. And so now, in this cocktail revolution, that's what I like to call it, over the last 10 years, and what they're doing in large cities and really everywhere. You're getting it from us, even in Manhattan, Kansas. And really their spirits are coming back, the ones that weren't made for 25 years or more. They're coming.
And what are these?
Oh, just lots of different liqueurs that were made. You have more and more whiskeys coming out. Rye whiskey, for one, is hitting the market hard. People are loving rye whiskey. But, people over the last 20 years don't really drink much rye whiskey. But
Well,
now,
it wasn't even available, and wasn't even distilled or distributed.
right, now it's booming.
Booming.
Yeah, and
So
that's
what's the typical rye whiskey drink we could try?
actually, what people also don't really realize is that an old-fashioned and a Manhattan, two of the most classic cocktails, were originally made with rye whiskey. And then one of my favorite, the Sazerac. That is it's actually the official cocktail of New Orleans now, and it is a rye whiskey-based cocktail, and the glass is actually lined with absinthe. And it also
And what is that?
uses
Is that
bitters. Absinthe is a herbal liqueur or liquor that it's not a liqueur, it's a liquor because it's very high proof. It's the liquor that really has had so much controversy over the last 100 years, it was illegal in the States for about 85 years plus. And it was just re-legalized in 2007. And that's really a example of something that's coming back that people are now drinking that used to be drank, in France and US. Artists like Ernest Hemingway, Oscar Wilde, Picasso, they would drink it, and that was their muse for their art.
Ooh.
But so many different spirits like that are now coming back because they were lost for quite a while, and now, I would say my generation is really trying to bring back classic bartending.
And this makes your craft so exciting. I mean, and so you do see a lot of people your age getting into this?
I do, and there are people my age really, and a few years older in the big cities too, that they're really just bringing it back.
And tell us where this is headed. Is this headed into some sort of certification, like we have this with the sommelier, or is that even out there yet for a mixologist?
There are certifications, like Bar Smarts is one, for example. You can take classes online, and you can, learn how to bartend that way, and that kind of the classic bartending. But it's not required, really. It might be in a few states to get a certain level of certification. Other states have unions for being a bartender, or like New York and stuff like that.
So Griff, since you're the guy that's created your own signature cocktails, we're going to have to wrap it up here, but I can't let you get away without telling me how to do that. How is Joan Jerkovich going to create her own signature cocktail?
All right. I would say start with something that you like to drink. You said you like gin. And then you could look at a recipe like, I don't know what you like to drink with your gin martinis, but you could think of maybe something that would go well with gin in the kitchen, like maybe an herb or something. You could even infuse your gin yourself with a different, botanical, like lavender, and make yourself a lavender gin.
Which would be you just pour it on the herb, let it sit for a period of time.
Right, anywhere from, basically you try it every day to see how much of that flavor you want in it. But also you could add fresh lavender to a cocktail you're making right on the spot with other ingredients to add that lavender flavor or something. And then typically if you look at other drinks, you have citrus and you have sugar for sure. And so those really are, unless you want it to be a very strong drink with a couple liqueurs instead, but you just kind of look at other flavors that you might want, and then you could even start with, a certain specific cocktail and then work your way from there.
Well, this sounds like a lot of trial and fun, a lot of trial and error, a lot of fun,
Yeah.
where you just got to keep trying and tasting.
It's true.
Taste over a period of days if necessary. But Griff, I thank you so much for coming on and getting us in the spirit of the new year here, talking about mixology and the craft of bartending, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is Joan with the Joan Jerkovich Show, 910 KINA Salina, and again, be sure and stay tuned for our next guest. You'll want to hear our sommelier talking about being a wine expert and his certification in that craft, and that's here on Joan Jerkovich Show at 910 KINA Salina. So much more we can always talk about. And that's the same thing with Chad. And we're actually on video, so
Okay.
if you have something that we didn't catch on that, a lot of your friends especially will go on video and watch. Yeah. Because are you doing any parties down there? Can we get a group of people together and you can teach us how to create cocktails, or just
we haven't done anything.
I want to wear my June Cleaver pearls and come down and feel like I'm back in the old days.
We probably could do something like that. We haven't really.
Uh-huh.
We more like tend to go toward like tastings with food.
Okay, that's good too.
We've done a champagne tasting recently and paired it with some food.
Now wait a minute, that's in the wine arena.
Right.
So how do you get involved with that?
Well,
are you also serving cocktails? Well, you're the bar manager.
See, I'm also serving wine, beer. I need to be well versed in all of that.
That's true.
And food even. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really the whole package because we have a full service bar.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to know about all the cocktails, but everything else as well.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
But we've done like liquor tastings before to kind of learn about a specific spirit with customers. Like we've done bourbon.
Well, and I've had try that because, I mean, it's just like anything, you know, you might want to pull out of the cabinet or go to the store and buy. You really don't know what they taste like. And then you're looking in the liquor store and, well, I don't know if I even like it to buy that whole big bottle. And especially when you get into the premium brands, you're getting, you know, pretty expensive. So you have that where they could come in, say I said I like gins, and try different brands of gin.
Yes, actually.
Like just for example, how many different brands of gin do you carry?
Gin, we probably carry 25 different brands of gin.
No. So you have Bombay Sapphire, which is very
yeah.
common, but you have Hendrix.
We have Hendrix, we have, you know, Old Raj, Aviation.
Okay,
Lots of gins people haven't heard of, but
absolutely.
are booming on the coasts. And
they are.
Yeah.
They really are. And you know, it's just like even one of the drinks I do enjoy occasionally is a gin gimlet.
Okay.
And I like it with Hendrix. And you won't believe what I've gotten served to me when I've ordered that. I usually have to almost literally write it out for them, or I get a Glenlivet, which is a Scotch.
Well,
I mean, I've literally had them bring me a Scotch.
For instance, the gimlet, that was also something I was thinking of if you wanted to add an herb to it. Like lavender. I have a lavender gin gimlet. I think that would be very nice.
Wow.
I've never done it, but it could be good.
Okay, yeah. Well, and I can see where, you know, you're not so much with what you're doing in the service of the public, you know, wanting to put a brand. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about, you know, putting your name on some of these cocktails you're creating? How about some of your cohorts out there that are doing what you're doing?
One of my good friends who I used to work with at Four Olives, he actually is coming out with his own line of bitters soon.
There you go.
And yeah, that's a really cool thing that he's doing. And he wants to come out with multiple labels of his bitters and market them really in the immediate area, Kansas City and Midwest, really.
Because I was reading somewhere online that said, you know, some of the consumers are getting so snobbish they'll bring their own bitters in.
Yeah.
And say, here,
it's
maybe it's something
true.
have you seen that? They bring their own concoctions in and say, make my drink with this?
I would.
You would do it?
I have, yeah. In fact, I haven't said make my drink with it, but I'll take it out of my pocket and then put it in my whiskey that I ordered or something.
Okay. Now, how would you feel about that if a customer came in and did that?
I would actually, personally, I would be totally okay with it.
I think you would too. I think it would be kind of exciting
because
it's almost a
I'd like to try whatever bitters they're using. And we get people, you know, who want to try new things, and that's really what I'm about. Is with this classic cocktail menu that we have, we actually have this little promo going on that you can try every cocktail, all 38 cocktails, and we have a card that we keep for you, and that's just, you know, people are loving to do that. They come in with their wife or their date, and they can do it as a couple, do it together, and it's a lot of fun. And it's really to make people try new things.
So it's like a little club almost that you get into where you, you know, have them. You know, of course, they're not going to drink all 35 cocktails in one setting, so they're coming back in and, we haven't tried that one yet, and that sort of thing. So are you all over Facebook promoting some of these little special events you have?
Yeah, we also have a newsletter that we send out weekly, and Twitter account as well.
Now, your owner has to be very progressive or very supportive of this aspect.
I mean, everything, you know, most everything I've learned from him behind the bar, you know. And then reading books. And then a couple of the other bar managers that were before me that trained me how to bartend, really. So.
Now, do you ever get into, and I was, you know, going to see, we didn't really have time for this, but how about the molecular mixology, where they create cocktails with molecular gastronomy, the gels, the powders, the foams, the atomized sprays? Do you use some of that?
We do, yeah.
That's really crossing into culinary, isn't it?
One thing that we really like to do are, you know, light things on fire. That's a lot of fun.
So those 35, you get at least 5 that light on fire?
Yes, there are a few that we light on fire. One called a Blue Blazer that I'll actually toss back the flame back and forth in the Scotch cocktail. And it was actually the first flare bartending cocktail. So
created where?
By Jerry Thomas, the guy I was telling you about earlier.
Yeah.
He created it, and you toss them back between these mugs, and it's the coolest show I've ever seen in a cocktail. So
you could be in a restaurant someday, and all of a sudden you see table service, and you see this blue flame flying around. And you're like, I want one of those.
You probably wouldn't do it at a table unless it wasn't very busy. I have done it at a table, but most of the time you stay behind the bar so no one can bump you.
Yeah, or the fire marshal walks in.
Exactly.
or he's driving by and sees that. Are there any restrictions with that, with the fired cocktails?
I don't even know actually.
Okay, let's don't.
We do
Let's
have
don't
a
even
fire
ask.
extinguisher firsthand.